Hello, and welcome to the Conscious Communion podcast, where we traverse through the inner dwellings of the human experience through conversation. I'm your host, Danae. Join me as we explore the interconnection of creativity and community. Riyaz Motan is a spiritual guide and a marriage and family psychotherapist practicing his work for the past 25 years. His work interweaves Eastern wisdom traditions and Western psychology to help others find freedom from suffering to awaken to their essential wholeness. Riyaz grounds his work in a belief that suffering ensues when we are not fully in touch with our essence. His two main teachers, John Prendergast and Adi Shanti, have deeply influenced his work and spiritual life, leading him to aid both clients and students to enliven an innate experience of vitality, receptivity, and creativity through the lens of presence. Riyaz is a father to his beloved son and lives with his wife in the Bay Area. Here is Riyaz Motan. Hello and welcome.
Hello, Danae. I feel so welcomed. Thank you. Good to be with you.
Of course. So good to be with you. And for context, Riyaz is actually a mentor to Luke Weinstein, who we had on the podcast a couple episodes back. And because of Luke's kindness and ability to just welcome up space for others to know others, Riyaz and I have had the beautiful blessing to be introduced to one another. And here we are.
Yes. Thank you, Luke. Shout out to Luke.
Yeah. Shout out, Luke. I am so grateful, and I've just been so enthralled with your work since I've been introduced to it, and digesting the information that you share with the world and the way that you share it has been so fully transformative to me in my walk within the past month. And it's been such an experience to use the knowledge that I've had, but then to ease into it with a different perspective and really see changes in the happening. Whereas the knowledge wasn't doing anything for me. It was the experience that needed to be felt. And I wanted you to just share a little bit about what your ideas are on relational meditation, because that to me has been such a profound integration process for myself and digesting that. So if you could just explain to folks what that is, because I believe that all of us could integrate that into our own lives in such a beautiful way.
Yeah. Great question. Let's see what comes through. Relational meditation I've been doing it for a long time before I had a name for it. And it was a practice that I was using primarily with my clients. As you mentioned, I'm a psychotherapist. And for years and years and years, I was sitting with my clients and I was using all the skills and practices that I'd been using when I was meditating to really stay present, to really stay embodied, and to really sit with my clients in a meditative way. And what I noticed about that was that it just enhanced everything. I could backtrack a little bit. Now, I won't, there's a lot of story, but I can go into it, or I won't right now. But when I first started out as a psychotherapist, actually before I was even a master's level graduate, before I went to graduate school, I was as a counselor up in Vancouver, Canada, working with teens. Really intense situations. Some of them were street kids. Some of them were really, drug abusers, and incredible suffering and emotional and family difficulties. And I loved it. It was my first job where I thought, oh my God, I get to do this. And I just gave my heart and soul and everything to these kids, and was amazed I would get a paycheck every couple of weeks. And so about a year or a year and a half into that experience, I was back in my mid-20s at that point, I started to realize I was burning out. I wasn't burnt out, but I could see people who'd been in the field ahead of me that were burnt out. I could feel their dryness, their fatigue, their lack of spark. And I could feel myself like in the early stages of that. And I didn't know I was really kind of scared because I loved what I did, but I thought, I know this is not sustainable, and I'm not going to be able to show up and feel effective and just true to what I was able to output at that point. And luckily at that time, I was practicing meditation as a way to just relieve the stress and recharge myself, on the weekends or in the evenings. But even that wasn't quite enough. And I discovered the work of John Wellwood, and he put together this Eastern meditative view with this Western psychological technology and practices in such a seamless way that I just got so turned on to it. It's back in the days before the internet, and I wrote him a letter. And I said, "Oh my God, all these lights are going off. Like, where can I learn to do this? Because if I can bring my meditative practice into my psychological work with people, this feels transformative to me." And it was already transformative personally, because I was bringing those practices I was reading about into my own life, into my own relationships. Anyway, long story short, I went to the Omega Institute. He invited me to a 7-day workshop, and all we did was meditated all day. He gave talks on healing from meditative awareness. It was called The Healing Power of Unconditional Presence. That was the title of that 7-day seminar. And then we meditated all day, and then we sat in dyads and listened and guided. Everybody was sort of healers of one sort of another. And what I noticed as I sat with people from this deep meditative awareness was everything flowed. I was way more perceptive. I was way more effective, and I was way more energized. And it was just like, oh my God, this is radical. And so a real lightning bolt kind of went off there. I thought, wow. I came back home and started working with these kids, and my work was radically different because now I was working from something deeper than my mind, deeper than my will. I was present, and I was using my breath, using my attention to stay at home. So to come back to relational meditation, the invitation, and I can talk more about it, is how do we stay at home as we listen to the other? And because usually we go out with our attention. We think listening means it's like an antenna. You have to tune in to the other, and you kind of tune out unconsciously to yourself. And this is sort of the inversion of that. It's like, no, actually, if you tune in deeply on every level, mind, heart, body, and the essential level, you're staying at home, and then you can receive the guest. And my mentor, John Prendergast, has this beautiful saying. He says, you must be at home to receive the guest. And so this meditative practice of listening to another, relating to another, relational meditation, is an invitation we make to ourselves to stay at home. And there's a practice that you can use. It's very simple, and I can talk more about that, that allows you to stay at home. And interestingly enough, you don't need to go out. You actually can take in the other on multiple levels and multiple dimensions with way more sensitivity, with way more attunement, and bring all of your intuitive, receptive capacities online. So relational meditation is just really another way to say it is a way to deeply listen and to be in relationship without getting lost in your mind or getting lost in the content of what happens in relationship, because there's a lot that's happening. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's my first stab at it.
I love that. Yeah. And I have some notes, and deep listening is here. And I would love for you to just further extend more conversation and explanation around what deep listening and coming back home to the self actually means, because I think that's helpful for folks to hear it, but then to also potentially sit with themselves and try to feel what you're describing that process looks like.
Yeah, great question. So I love describing deep listening, but actually inviting people into deep listening. So this is something listeners can do right now. You probably could do it even if you were driving a car, but obviously much better to be in a more less interactive, dynamic state. So let me describe really the 4 levels of deep listening. And the first thing, before I go into the 4 levels of deep listening, we'll we'll do what you and I did at the start, which is we use the breath. The breath is the anchor. The breath is the cadence. The breath is what brings us into presence, into the now, into our bodies, and into awareness. So the breath is vital. And so we might start by just noticing that we're breathing and really dropping our attention down with our breath into the heart, into the belly, into the body. So that just brings us into a little bit more of a state of presence. And so we listen on 4 levels. So let yourself know we listen on the level of the mind, level of the head. So you can listen to me right now, but just be receptive, be open. You don't need to grasp with your mind. You don't need to chew on things with your mind. You don't need to anticipate. Your mind is actually very open, very receptive, just naturally. The natural state of the mind is openness. But we have to kind of invite ourselves into a softening of the mind. So you can actually, feel the openness of your ears. Your ears are just an opening on each side of your head that receive the words, the vibration of my speaking, whatever's going on. So just feel the open receptivity of your ears and the space inside your head. Relax your brow. We tend to furrow our brow. We tend to kind of grasp with our minds. Just soften the brow. Soften your eyes. Feel the softness behind your eyes. Soften your mouth, your tongue, your jaw. So I'm inviting us to just very consciously listen on all these levels right now. And once you practice it more and more, it just becomes second nature. So right now you're just doing a very conscious kind of intentional practice of listening with an open mind, feeling the openness of the head space, relaxing the muscles, the tension, and breathing. And then next we'll drop down to the heart space. Take a breath down, feel your heart, feel the space of the heart. Feel any openness, any spaciousness within the heart. And the breath can help you find that. There can be tightness, there can be contraction, there can be feeling, pain, sadness, grief, whatever. It's all welcome. You're just opening to it with your awareness. And this also allows you to open to the emotional layers of what's happening relationally. You might even be able to feel a tone of my emotionality, my mood, my feeling tone. It might be very subtle, but when you're sitting with people, it might be very dramatic or intense. So you're not just listening to the words with your mind, you're listening with your heart. You're simply listening with your heart by listening to your own heart. Mm-hmm. We're just receptive, resonant beings, and all our organs and layers of dimension are actually receptive. They're listening. We need to listen to them and with them. So you're just welcoming feeling. It might be yours, it might be the others, it might be a intersubjective kind of feeling between the two of you. And now you can drop your breath down and your attention down to the belly. Let your breath soften and open the belly. And actually just soften and open all the way down into your pelvic floor, feeling your legs, your feet in contact with the ground, your arms, your hands. Oh, just your body's coming online and your attention and your sensing, feeling the vibration, the energy, the aliveness, the vitality of your body, your energy field. And once again, that is a vibrant, resonant field. We listen with our bodies. Our bodies vibrate with each other. So as you're listening to me, you're vibrating with me. You're taking me in on a vibrational level, on a somatic level, on an energetic level. This is all just information. We're listening not just with our minds to the words, we're listening with our hearts and emotional bodies. We're listening with our somatic and energetic bodies. And so just more listening is happening, more layers of receptivity. And then there's the deepest layer of listening, the essential layer, we might call it, which is just listening to listening, opening to openness. A simple way to invite this, it's hard to think about. The mind can't get this actually. Just, you can ask yourself, am I aware? Am I aware of being aware? And so awareness just self-reflectively turns back to itself. It falls back into this openness, this awakeness. It's always here. That's actually the source of listening. It's always listening. Everything is known through awareness, in awareness. And so we can focus on the contents of our experience, which is important. That's mindfulness. What am I feeling? What am I thinking? What am I sensing? But we can actually open to just this open field, the context in which experience is happening, in which experience is being known. And that actually lends a spaciousness, a freedom, a deep calm, a deep peace to whatever's happening. In a way that I like to think about it, like our listening mostly, our experience is happening on the surface of experience. Surface of the ocean is a metaphor that's used often. And there's waves. Sometimes it's calm, sometimes it's choppy. There's a lot. Emotion, words, content, sensation, a lot happening on the surface. Important to pay attention to it. That's where the currents of listening and relating happen. But we can stay rooted in the depths of our being, the depths of the ocean, which are always calm, always deeply abiding in a spacious peace. And so we just invite ourselves to actually stay rooted in that. And, in this moment, if you're just tuning into all these levels, you just notice, yeah, your thoughts are here. Your mind is taking in what I'm saying. You're aware of the visual field, what's happening. You're aware of your heart space, what you're feeling, any emotion, tone, mood, sensation, energy, vibration in the body, contraction, warmth, expansion. It's all welcome. It's all actually just happening, whether we're aware of it or not. We're just inviting ourselves to be more aware, more receptive. And then we're just letting ourselves be aware, be this awareness that we naturally are. All of this is happening in a deep, abiding awareness. And so it's just this flow now. You can just feel it's all just flowing. You're just the space in which everything is flowing. And everything's welcome. Some things are more intense, more negative. We might react to them. We might resist them. You notice that. You notice that on every level. You can notice mental resistance. I don't like this. I want to change this. Judgment of your experience or the other. You welcome that. That's just more thought. And the resistance can also have an emotional component to it or contraction to it. You're not feeling good. You're not liking this feeling. So you welcome that. You notice that. Soften into that. Invite yourself to just listen to that. Be with that. And then it can add a somatic, energetic component. You can actually feel tightness, contraction around things in certain parts of your body. You welcome that. You notice that. You allow that. You just bring awareness to it. And breath. So once again, breath is the key. Wherever you notice contraction, Breathe into it. Breathe through it. Breathe with it. And you can do this all on the fly as you're listening to me. With more practice, we notice that, we can actually do things simultaneously. We don't need to do one or the other. You don't need to stop listening to me to listen to yourself. And that's just the practice. It gets easier and better. So that's kind of an invitation, experiential kind of description of deep listening. And I will say the other part of it, by the way, I don't want to leave this out. It's not just noticing the contractions. It's noticing the expansion. Mm-hmm. That's a really important thing. It's just as important. You might notice like insights opening in your mind, awareness coming without trying to grasp. Your mind might just put things together or have associations come. Let those happen. Your heart might open. You might be lit up by what you're hearing, or you might be feeling a positive feeling. It might be sadness, but like a sweet sadness, or it might be compassion, or it might be excitement or joy, or vicarious joy, like, kind of sympathetic joy. So all these things become more online and available. They become part of your listening field, your receptivity, and they tell you so much. And your body might also light up. It might energize when somebody's talking about something, or your heart may open, or your belly may soften, or you might feel energy running through your feet and grounding, or you might feel expansion opening up in your head or up above you. And these can be very subtle, and we might not notice them if we're just tracking the other person and listening and trying to make sense and thinking about what we're going to say next and be helpful and be connecting things to theory and ideas we know, which is all really useful, really helpful. But we're getting a little too top-heavy, a little too mind-focused, and we lose this incredible intelligence, wisdom of the heart and the body. So this is my kind of invitation to relational meditation. I started doing it mainly with healers, with therapists, with all sorts of people who hold space. And it's still what I love to do. But as you were sharing, it applies to all listening. It applies to our relationships with our intimate partners and our friends and our kids and everybody. And so you can practice it everywhere. Grocery clerks and driving in the car, listening to the radio. So, okay, that's a long kind of explanation, invitation, but I hope it's resonant and useful.
So beautiful. Got really blissed out there for a moment. I was like, I hope I can come back online after that. But as you said, that's part of it. It feels so foreign in leaning into that because we're not taught that, right? Unless right. It's something that we learn from someplace. And it's not something that we're learning in school. It's not something that we're learning in relationships. So it's not just even in religious settings, it's not talked about necessarily. I know the Buddha said, breathe with your whole being. And I'm reading a book right now on how it really is about, it's exactly what you're talking about. It's feeling into the breath and the spaces that hold contraction, and how oftentimes those places of contraction, when breathing into those places, are where you find your expanse. And just letting it soften. And as much as it makes sense, the feeling aspect is different. It's very different.
Yeah. It's a felt shift. And you can sense when you're listening from your mind, listening from anticipation of future, listening from memory of what you know and trying to apply it to the present, versus actually listening from the moment, fully listening from the whole being. It's a different experiential sense, like the sense of just flow, aliveness, connection with the other, with yourself, with your body, with your heart, with being, with the wholeness of being, with the oneness of being. Everything opens up. And that's why I think about it. Honestly, I really do. It's a practice. It's not just a practice of being a better listener. It's a spiritual practice. It will open your being up. It will deepen your wholeness, your ability to be present in yourself, with life, which is a spiritual practice. That's what most spiritual practices are about, is like, how do you be more true, connected, compassionate, alive, receptive? Yeah.
Receptive. I think staying open can be really difficult for a lot of people, especially when they've been hurt or when they've experienced some type of trauma in their lives. And I know that you work with people that have experienced that, as a psychotherapist. That's what you're probably dealing with quite often on a daily basis with your clients. And so what has this practice for you done for your clients? Like, what has that been able to teach you in your inner workings of being someone who's holding space for people who are, navigating hard things? What does that look like for you?
Great question. Been vital. It's been the through line from the beginning. I told you about this John Wellwood workshop that I did at the Omega Institute when I was 25 or 26, which radicalized things, which eventually led me to CIS and graduate school. And my mentor, where I met, who was a professor there, John Prendergast, who really took this to a whole another level. And that's where I really learned how to do this, to relationally meditate, to deeply listen, to stay at home. And what that has done for me as a therapist, primarily as a healer, that, like I said, it expands into everything, is it allows me to listen from source, to be resourced, like I was talking about, from the depth of being. So not only does it open up my receptive intelligence of body, mind, heart, intuition, all of that, but it actually grounds me in the body, in the breath, and in being, in the depth of being. And so that becomes an incredible resource for me, an unshakableness, a stability that no matter how choppy the surface is, no matter what the person's sharing with me, I can stay rooted and grounded in a calm, abiding presence and in breath, and trust what's happening, even though it's intense. And then I can actually not go to, how do I fix this? How do I get them to a different place? Because in a way, this is subtle, but I hope this makes sense and lands for people. When we are moving from what's happening right now is not okay, so let me bring my techniques and theories and ideas, even if it's from a really well-intentioned place, to how do I change what you're experiencing and get you to a better place. In a way, we're rejecting the moment and we're saying what's happening right now is not okay. Let's get to okayness, because it exists somewhere else in the future, in a manipulation of your experience and what's happening right now. And so that's why this is a radical shift, because in a way we're saying, let's be with this experience fully. Let's bring presence, resource to what's happening and trust that it's actually enough. The healing power of unconditional presence, that was the title. That's really what I'm talking about. It's a deep trust that I've discovered through this practice, and that's what helps me to come back to your question. Be with clients that are in really difficult, painful things. Everything's trauma in a sense. Small t trauma to big T trauma. And if I can be with my client from an unshakable sense of like, whatever's happening is okay. I trust this. Let me be with you in a way that'll help you be with this. Let's bring resources online to be with you in this way. Then it can actually start to shift, and they can actually realize that there's a deep okayness in the midst of their not okayness. And if they can tap into that, and I can help them tap into that, the shift comes organically through the being with the pain or the discomfort or the intensity. And so another way to say this, many ways to say this, and many facets to this, I, or you, that's the listener listening from body presence become a stabilizing force. There's a transmission of stability that you're lending your client. We talk about dyadic regulation. We talk about attachment. In relationship, there's things that we can do when we're sitting with another person that we can't do with ourselves. We don't have the capacity. We don't have the presence. We don't have the nervous system bandwidth to tolerate things sometimes. And so we go into, dissociation and all sorts of defense mechanisms. Bless them. They are ways that we have kept ourselves alive, kept ourselves sane, kept ourselves from falling apart, kept ourselves functional. But they also are, to use a term that is used pejoratively, but I don't mean it that way. They're neurotic. They are maladaptive to the current situation and current reality of what we're in and who we are now, because they were adaptations from an earlier time. It was adaptive at one point, but now we're just sort of fixed and habitual. And so in a way, if we just keep playing those out, we keep getting the same results, and we keep avoiding or missing the opportunity to heal the trauma, heal the contraction, be with the contraction in a way that actually yields us back into presence, yields us into our natural intelligence and fluidity and creativity and flexibility and wholeness that exists now. So you become that presence and that invitation that this is trustworthy. We can be with this. You can be with us. And just like a child will look to the parent, like, am I okay? Is this okay? My little one, my big one who's 20 now, when he was little and he skinned his knee and fell at the playground or something, often the first thing he'd do, he'd look up at me, he'd look at his parents in alarm, and like my somatic, emotional, energetic kind of response kind of let him know if this was okay or not okay. It almost helped him interpret or be with it in a different way. Not that he wouldn't cry, not that he wouldn't need to be held or loved. All of that would happen. But if it was coming from a panic, reactive place, like, oh my God, that's horrible, he would go into something even bigger. But if it came from a place like, oh, I see what just happened. Oh, you're in pain. I see that. Let me help you with that. Let's be with that. Let me hold you. Let me talk to you. The vibration of that response is soothing, is trusting, and is actually going to elicit a certain kind of inner calm, inner trust in him versus a reactive space. So anyway, long-winded again, but I hope it's helpful. That helps me be with my clients. This practice helps me be with my clients and then make that same invitation to them that they probably can't do on their own. That's why they're here with me. And so I don't shy away from the trauma. I don't say, let's get away from this and let's go to a happy place or a better place. I say, let's see if we can be with this in a better way. Let me help you with that.
I love that. And there was in just digesting your work and being able to understand it from a really beautiful onlooking perspective, there was something that you had mentioned about also not necessarily guiding them straight to it, but allowing them to really explore that for themselves. And that's like, I think so often we want to fix things. And you had mentioned that a little bit, just a bit earlier. And I know that we want to do that in our relationships, with whether it be with our significant other or for folks that have kids. I'm sure that they want to fix it for them, whether it be conflict in relationships or whatever it may be. What would you suggest to someone to, rather than fix, take a step back and just allow whatever, like what steps would you suggest for someone to kind of take that approach rather than the fixing perspective? Because I think so many of us want to fix everything.
Me too. That's why this practice is so powerful, because it helps me still, I should say, undo that tendency that's so deep in us, Yeah. So I'll say a couple of things, preliminary things. This is said so much, but it just deserves to be said again. The biggest best, most important gift we can give to somebody else is just our simple presence, our deep listening, our full attention, without trying to change their experience. That's a really rare gift. And we feel it when somebody's really listening to us with full presence, with full acceptance. It actually, what it does is there's a lot of things it does. One is it allows us to feel accepted, all of our experience to be accepted. And then it also helps us listen more deeply to ourselves. It can be through the reflection of the words of whatever you're reflecting, but mostly it's wordless. Mostly it's actually just in the resonance. We can sense, we can see, but more than that, we can sense and feel when we're being taken in. And it's precious. It's like manna. It's like a nectar, And so I think that's what we most deeply long for. There's always a part of us often, and I had this with my clients, that is saying, fix me. This is so bad. Like take me away from this. Help me not feel this. Help me feel better about this. So there's a pull. There's an energetic, emotional pull. And that's what we're feeling often. I feel it with my clients. I feel it with my loved ones. And it's an intense pull, because that's also very human. Like, I don't want to feel this. I want to feel better. Help me feel better. And so in a way, it's interesting. I am in some ways saying, I've never said this, and it sounds weird as I'm about to say it. I'm just going to say, ignore that. Ignore that pull, but it's not a good way to say it. Hear that pull, but don't be pulled by it. As best as you can, remain in presence, remain in deep listening, and take in the other person. And so to come back to exactly what you're asking, which is such a great question, what happens in that pull that we feel is there's a corresponding place in us that is being pulled. And so when we will go to interventions to fix, to help, to heal, to change the other person's experience, it is unconsciously usually trying to change our own experience. It's painful. It's uncomfortable to be sitting with another's pain, especially the closer they are to you, the more you love them, the more attached you are to them. Your child, your partner, your close friend, your client, but there's degrees of separation because our attachment is different with each one, right? Our stuff is intertwined. Our energetic, emotional self is so hooked in, it just is. And so when their pain is happening, it's resonating, vibrating, pulling, contracting emotionally, cognitively, sensationally, energetically in us. And so staying at home in the way that I was describing and listening from staying at home, what it'll do is you'll be taking in the content of what they're saying, but you'll be noticing that pull. And how I experience the pull is you'll be noticing a contraction in you. It's uncomfortable. It's painful. And you'll want to rescue them or help them out of what they're in, but it's because in some ways you're wanting to rescue and help yourself out of what you're feeling. And so interventions that come from that place are much less trustworthy and much less effective from my experience, from my perspective. When I feel myself coming from a reactive place or a contracted place, I get really curious. And I just acknowledge it wow, I'm feeling really scared right now. I'm really anxious as I'm listening, or I'm really sad right now, or I'm really pained, or I'm feeling really tight. I notice what's happening in my own experience. And then I just bring breath to it. I'll talk much more about this FABU process that I don't know if you got to it in my course that I was teaching, but it's very relevant. It's a 4-step process that we can do with ourselves and we can do with others. And it's, in a way, I'm talking about it without talking about it now. You notice the resistance to what's happening, the contraction to what's happening emotionally, cognitively. Whatever you're trying not to experience is the what you actually need to open to. You bring your breath to it, you bring your awareness to it, and you invite yourself to soften into it. And that softening into it, that being with it, actually then allows you to be with the other person as they are and not go to trying to change the experience, because you're not trying to change your own experience. And all of a sudden, you're not compartmentalized anymore. You're not, oh, I'm listening to you, but I'm trying not to feel this or experience this. And then from a compartmentalized place, you're saying, let me change what's happening with us right now so I don't have to feel this thing that I don't want to feel. But as soon as you let yourself, you invite yourself with your breath, with your awareness, with your own inner compassion, can I just feel this uncomfortable thing, this feeling, contraction, belief, without reacting to it? And you soften into it. All of a sudden what happens is you become whole again. You come back to your whole experience, your body, your feelings, and you're aware in a more holistic sense again. And then you're aware of what's happening with them, and you're no longer needing to change what's happening. And then from this place, this is sort of the magic of it. Now you're listening to them, and you're feeling sad, you're feeling anxious, you're feeling whatever, but you're with it in a different way. You're with yourself in a different way. And now you're with them in a different way. Interventions will happen. Ideas will happen. Words will happen. Connections will happen. But now they're happening from okayness. I don't need this to be different. I just want to offer this to what's happening. This is something that is coming from the moment, not from a resistance to the moment, from a reactivity to the moment, from trying to get to a different moment. It's coming from just source itself, just from the innate intelligence and wisdom of your being, or the inter-intelligence of our subjective beings. Okay, that's
so special. That's beautiful. And I think it's really helpful because I know for myself, like I can speak honestly and be fully transparent that I so often want folks to feel better. Whatever they're going through, you want them to feel better. But it's not our job to make anyone feel better. And ultimately, it's up to us to do our own due diligence, to look within, to soften those edges, and really just uncover and discover, right? Like stay curious.
Uncover and discover. Beautiful.
Yeah, it's just, I would love for you to share about Fabu, because that's really, there's a lot of juice there. There's a lot of just magic that can unfold in the unfolding of Fabu. And I would love for you to just share that.
Sure.
If you would, please.
I would, yeah. I realize there's something I want to highlight that's implicit in what I was just saying earlier. And that's why I talk about it as a spiritual practice, because it actually takes deep trust to trust the moment. It's easy to trust the moment when it's flowing, when it feels good, when, things are vibing and you're feeling, or the other person's in a good place. Can we trust the moment when it's not feeling good, when the other person's in a hard place? That's really where the rubber hits the road. That's really where real trust, deep trust is actually unconditional.
That is so good. Woof.
Yeah.
I felt that on such a deep level.
And this is why I call it a spiritual practice, because actually our human selves, our conditioned selves, our personalities, they actually can't do the unconditional very well at all. This is like where our unconditional nature is what we need to tap into. That's why, once again, we'll come back to the healing power of unconditional presence.
Mm-hmm.
If we really can open and be present to whatever's arising with unconditional presence, some kind of magic, some kind of unfoldment becomes possible that isn't available to us when we are in conditional presence or condition. Let's be with it so it will change. Let's be with this so we can manipulate it and get to a better place. I'm not saying that's not useful. I'm not saying that all those things are not good, but there's a depth and a power and a magic that's offered even deeper when we can come from this deeper trust. And then so much happens in there. And I won't go off on this, but in a way, that's the transmission you're giving when you're sitting with another person. Without even saying it, you're saying, I know this is excruciating. I know this is hard, but I trust this. I trust that we can be with this, that you can be with this. And there's actually life in this, beauty in this, magic in this, healing in this. And that becomes a practice as you're sitting with your clients or sitting with a friend. It's a gift you're giving them, because slowly they're starting to kind of have that orientation introduced to them, not because you're saying, yeah, that's bad, let me show you how to get away from it. They're saying, yeah, that feels bad. Let's be with that. Let me help you be with that, because I actually think there's something trustworthy in that. And then that becomes something that they start to be able to do on their own, which is the biggest gift I can give to my clients: independence, autonomy, self-sufficiency. You know, they internalize not just me, which they do me, but they internalize the process, they internalize the practice. And then you're like, oh, I love it when my clients go, I had this thing come up and I wanted to tell you about it, but I kind of just figured it out on my own. And I don't mean figured it out. I love it because it's not top down. It's like, I just was able to be with it, and it kind of shifted. And now they're telling me about the fruits of their practice rather than the, oh my God, like help me with this thing. Not always, but that's to me one of the greatest joys, is just celebrating their inner capacity unfolding and blossoming. And it's kind of like what you want with your child. You want them to blossom. You want them to be fully functioning and blossoming and coming into their own, not like needing you so much. So anyway, that was a tangent, but I kind of an important tangent I want to say before I go into the FABU kind of process.
That was really helpful. Really helpful. I love how, and I love how you brought up that it's okay. Like, it's okay to experience these feelings that could be hard. And I know that you too are a nature enthusiast, and think nature is just our greatest teacher, and in seeing that it's all okay. We can see the seasons, we can witness how they churn, and just be with it, see it, recognize it.
Yeah. Yeah, we have that in common. Nature is such a teacher, such a resource. We talked about that, and it's the same principle. I think you're pointing to it. I think we implicitly, when we're in nature, feel nature just is. Whatever's happening is okay. The trees bend with the wind. The leaves fall when they're meant to fall. The water finds its own course. And there's like an implicit teaching that it happens deeper than our minds. We come back into our own true nature. We come back into our natural way of being, because we're kind of invited back into it. We're kind of resonant with nature, and it helps us come back into our own natural intelligence, our own natural way of being. And so we can also be that transmission for others as we sit with them in a deep trust, a deep natural way of being. We make that same invitation, that same trust. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yes, I would love for you to share about FABU and what that process looks like for folks if they choose to use it for themselves, because it's super helpful.
Great. Thank you for the invitation. Yeah, I'll say about FABU, it's a 4-step process that, I work very intuitively, and like I said, I didn't realize that what I was doing was relational meditation till later. And I didn't even know what FABU was, and it was a 4-step process, or I could describe it in 4 steps, until later. And what started to happen for me probably a good 6-7 years ago, I've always been a healer for 25 plus years. That's sort of been the archetype that I've really connected to, and I just love when I get to be in that mode. And it's a beautiful process for me. It's a natural process for me, and I'm always learning and unfolding in it. But it was very intuitive, and it was very hard to describe what I did. And then about 6 or 7 years ago, this kind of teacher kind of archetype kind of started to kind of come into my field, and I felt myself being invited to teach and feeling called to teach in different ways. And so what started to happen was I started to kind of think about while I was healing and while I was working with others. It's like this teacher part of me was like, okay, how would I describe this? I'm teaching a class tomorrow, or I'm leading a group tomorrow. Like, it was so interesting to be totally in it and then have this like witness going, taking notes almost simultaneously and not in a distracted way at all. I was like, oh, that's the first step. Oh, that's how I would talk about this. Oh, that's the second step. And it was almost like after the fact, I was like, oh, there's an intelligence I'm following. I don't even know what the steps are, but there is steps here. And so that's how Fabu kind of grew. And it actually was an inner process. And I talk about inner Fabu and outer Fabu. Outer Fabu is what I do with others, with my clients. But it's exactly the same process as what I do with myself. So what happened probably about 4 or 5 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, is I was teaching a group on Friday mornings. I have groups that I meet with on Friday mornings. They're all healers. And I was thinking, didn't know what I was going to teach the next day or talk about and introduce them to. But it was the evening, and I was actually feeling kind of depressed. I was feeling kind of just energetically, emotionally contracted. I had no story about it. I didn't know why. So I did what I know to do. I just sort of lay on the couch, and I said, okay, let's just be with this. And as I was laying there and I was being with it, the sort of inner teacher came online, not even intentionally at some point, was like, pay attention to this. This might be useful. And so I walked myself through a process that now I teach, and I teach it externally for people to apply to others, but also what to do when you are in a difficult place. So maybe it's good if I talk about what my process was that one first time, So I just lay there, and the first thing was I just acknowledged I was feeling bad. That's not part of Fabu, first of all, but sort of the preliminary thing is like, oh, there's something that needs attention. There's something that's feeling off or difficult or painful or uncomfortable. That's what's drawing my attention. So that's why I lay on the couch, and I kind of made some space, some quiet time for me to just be with it. And then my attention went to, okay, what is this? Is it a feeling? Is it a sensation? Does it have a location? Is it a belief? What am I feeling, sensing, thinking about, or believing? Like, I just kind of got curious. Questions are really helpful for attention. They kind of, it's almost like, to me, questions are magic. Like, if you ask the right question, the answer appears. So I just ask myself, like, hey, what am I feeling? So the F part is, of Fabu, the first step is, what am I feeling? But it also can apply to what's the face of this experience? Can I give it a face? And what's the focus? So feeling, face, focus. Those are 3 different ways to think about. You're looking for whatever the amorphous experience is, give it a face, give it a focus, give it a feeling. And so I was in that experience, was like, yeah, I feel kind of depressed. I feel heavy. Oh, I feel tight. Oh, I feel a tightness in my solar plexus, like just a knot. And it felt like this condensed energy, had an emotional tone of like, yuck. Feeling yucky, tight, heavy density in my solar plexus. And I even had, it felt dark. It felt like black almost. So as I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to be with. And the teacher part of me was like, oh, you gave it a face, and then afterwards I came up with focus or feeling or whatever. But so it's like, okay. And then the next step was like A step. Can I just allow this to be here? Just accept it without trying to change it. Just for now, can I just accept that this is what is? Yeah, this is what is. I can allow it to be here right now. That was a simple step. It wasn't a big step. It was just a yes in my being. So then that go to the next step, which is the most important step, B. Can I just be with this? Can I breathe with this? Breathe into this, around this. That's why it's helpful to have a location, so you can actually bring your breath very intentionally into and around it? And can I befriend it? Those are the B words. Be with it as if you were with your best friend. Just lovingly, compassionately be with it. And the key to all of this is be with it without trying to change it, without resisting it, without analyzing it, without needing it to go anywhere, any time, any particular place. To be with it and just let it unfold in its own time, in its own way. That's the key. It's an unconditional being, speaking of unconditional presence. So you're inviting yourself into your unconditional nature. I'll say this as an aside, that it's been shocking to me the more I practice this with clients that are not even spiritual, not even meditative. I just invite them to just tap into that part of them that can be with things as they are. They can just unconditionally open to what is without trying to change it. You'd be surprised if you invite that forward, it comes forward. It's just always here. It's never not here. It's always in the background. But we can actually invite it into the foreground. So that's an aside. I'll come back to it, especially when I talk about the outer fabu, how to apply it with other people. So then I just simply be with this without trying to change it. Be with the contraction, the solar plexus, the darkness, the yuck, the heaviness. And I breathe with it. And I befriend it. And I just say, okay, I got you. I'm with you. I might say it, but mostly it's just a feeling tone, a kind of an orientation towards it. And I hang out with it. And it just stays for a while. But actually, interestingly enough, as I'm breathing, I'm connected to that resource of breathing, and I'm sensing and I'm feeling. We're coming into deep listening again. You can feel that tone. And I'm in this, inviting this deep, unconditional nature, this presence that I am, with 4 levels of listening again. You know, breathing is the anchor, but I'm letting myself open to things on every level. My thoughts, my beliefs, my feelings, my sensations, and just being with it all. It just started to, as I was laying there, I started to notice, oh, this density is feeling softer. This darkness is feeling a little lighter. It's spreading. It's like it's no longer this tight little ball on my solar plexus. It's sort of like becoming a kind of a softer ball, a wider ball, and it's expanding. And now the breath is able to soften into and move through it and around it. And now it starts to spread, and my belly starts to soften and relax, and my heart starts to soften and relax. I'm making it sound like it's happening very quickly. It's happening very slowly, incrementally, in little stages. And what starts to happen is, and this is the you part, was you be with it and let it just in its own time, in its own way. You're not anticipating, you're not needing it to go anywhere else, you're not needing it to go anywhere now. It will start to unfold. That's the you part. So as it unfolds, notice what unfolds. The sensations, the feelings, the thoughts, the images, and then be with that. So you go back and forth between be with it, let it unfold, be with what's unfolding. Let it unfold again, be with it. So sensation starts to relax. Oh, notice that. Be with that. Just be with the softening, be with the spreading. Oh, belly is starting to open and soften. Be with that. Breathe with that. Oh, heart is starting to come online, soften. Be with that. Oh, sadness. Oh, I'm sad. Be with that. I can't remember it so long ago. The sadness may have had a content to it. It may not have had a content to it. But that can often unfold. Also, oh, I'm sad about this. I'm sad about some situation or thing in my life that I didn't even know I was sad about. But I was contracted about it. I was unconsciously gripping against experiencing it. And that's a habitual contraction place for me, my solar plexus. And as I contracted, because I didn't know this, I was trying not to feel the sadness of the situation. Not only do I block myself from feeling something I don't want to feel, habitually, unconsciously, but then I block myself from the flow of energy, the flow of breath, the flow of feeling, the flow of being alive, the flow of wholeness. I'm depressed. I'm depressing my aliveness. I'm depressing my feeling. And so by being with the depression, I'm happy to stop if you want.
That's beautiful. No, I was
okay.
like that the word you're depressing what you're feeling. I've never thought of it like that. So that just came online for me like as very profound.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, we can talk about it as repressing or depressing. When we repress things, it shows up as other symptoms because repression is an unconscious mechanism. And so I was repressing, but so it shows up as depression for me. That's the way the symptomology shows up. And if we open to the symptomology, we open to the way contraction, uncomfortableness shows up, it's the portal back to wholeness. So to come back to my process, once I acknowledged I was depressed and I found the location, the sensation, the feeling, and I just unconditionally opened to it and breathed with it, and befriended it and bead with it, it unfolded. And then as I followed that organic unfoldment, bead, befriended with that, breathe with it, belly opens, heart opens, flow opens, wholeness comes back. But wholeness includes sadness. Now, all of a sudden, sadness is not a problem. Actually, good to feel it. It's information. It's actually real. I'm sad about, I don't remember the situation, but like I'm sad about this thing that happened, or this thing that I'm in with my partner or my child, or this disappointment that isn't going to happen in my life that I wanted to, or didn't happen that I, whatever it is. And now I can just like be with that. I can just let now it's not a problem. Now it's like, oh, I can just be with the sadness and my heart's open and it can unfold. And then maybe insights happen. It's like, and then I can talk about it. And I'll come back to it when I talk about the outer fabu. Now from wholeness, from being in flow, being in touch with the whole body, the whole being, my whole heart, and my mind's back online. Now the mind can kind of come back in beautifully. I can actually ask myself, what do I need? What does the sadness need? What needs to happen? What wants to happen? And once again, questions are amazing. All of a sudden it's like, oh, I need to talk to this person. Oh, I need to do this. Oh, nothing needs to happen. I just need to let this move through me. Oh, this thing that just is going on now is related to this childhood thing, this trauma. And like, it's so many things. It goes in unknown, uncountable dimension. Possibilities open up. And so this is like the healing power of unconditional presence. Once again, healing happens. And so what I'll say about it is the trust that I was talking about earlier, the trust in healing power of unconditional presence. No matter what it is, if we can open to it from a resource place, from a trusting place, using breath, using awareness, and bringing in the depth of being, our experience, no matter how uncomfortable it is, will always arc in the direction of wholeness, the direction of healing, you could say. So that's what I trust implicitly. And so anything that shows up in my clients, in myself, once I recognize it, once I acknowledge it, then I start to look for a way to be with it. I fabu it, so to speak. I try to give it a face, and then I try to be with it in this way I've described. And the same process happens externally. I didn't even know those were the steps until I kind of brought the teacher part of me online internally and then realized, oh, that's exactly what I'm doing with clients. So now I teach it to healers. And there's way more to the external process to it because it's much more complicated. But it's the same principles.
It is really beautiful how your experience led you to this beautiful teaching that you now get to share with others. And I really wanted to circle back to what you said about even the idea of potentially feeling something and it being something old and just letting it be. And sometimes we don't process things from our childhood. And when we come back online and we have the opportunity to feel safe and to trust our bodies and to actually sit with those things, sometimes those things that we didn't allow ourselves to process way back when come online as an opportunity for us to actually process them. And so that is just such it's so funny, because once I was learning about this and digesting it, experiences were coming up for me where it was like, okay, you think you've dealt with this, but have you really felt into it? Literally this week, I had multiple experiences, and I shared this with you earlier a bit, but I almost felt just like more agitated than usual. And I think it was because this awareness to this practice, to this thing, is now in the forefront of my mind. What are you actually going to do with it when this thing arises? Right? Yeah.
I love how you're practicing. I love how you're internalizing it. And it's working. You're working with it, but it starts to work you. And another way to think about what you were saying, I love what you're saying, because I was saying that our current experience becomes a portal that, if we really bring the right attention and intention and presence to it, it becomes a portal to healing. So in a way, like, and it can be in the present. It can be really healing the present. Like, oh, now I know how to talk to my partner or my child, or how to like deal with this task I've been procrastinating on or scared of. Like, insights come that are very here and now. But it also can go back to parts of you that have been closed down, or experiences that are still being held in the body or emotionally, that are actually needing to be felt and loved and liberated. And so in a way, the way that I think about it is, once you start to practice unconditional presence, once you become this trusting being that says, whatever is here, I'm going to love it. It's a different way to talk about this, but love to me is just like, I'm going to open to it, to you, unconditionally, and allow you to be as you are. And then in that loving embrace, things can unfold and blossom as they're meant to, not because I'm trying to get you to be different or away somewhere else. When that comes online in your being in a more trustworthy way, these young parts of you that have been forgotten, that have been buried and held down, held in, they start to go, oh, Mama's here. I'm coming. It's like they actually start to recognize, I'm going to surface myself, because I think I'm finally going to be heard. I think I'm finally going to come into the light, into the love. And so you start to kind of feel the alchemy of your life. Things that are happening in the present are designed to heal the past. And another way to say it is, things from your past that hold you from being present will keep getting your attention to help you be more present. So it's so interesting. Time kind of warps in a way here. The present and the past are right here simultaneously. They live in your being, in your body. And if you open to it, you can liberate the past, if that's even a thing. It doesn't make sense in a linear way. You come back for parts that have been forgotten, but they come back to liberate you to be more free, more whole in the present, in your current life. They come back and say, I need your attention, because you contract against me, and wherever you contract against me, you contract against life, and you contract against yourself. So it's this beautiful kind of coming together of your past and your present in service of your future, in service of life that's wanting to still be lived, but more fully lived through you as you.
It's so beautiful. I keep hearing this, like reclaiming, like this reclamation of what's been conditioned to be unconditional. And I think you mentioned something about the conditions of our past becoming an opportunity to be unconditional and falling further into flow of those unconditional aspects to who we are, which is love, right? We are love, we are compassion, and we are all of those beautiful things that we can feel when we sit in this place of recognizing and giving ourselves the space to just be. We just are, and letting ourselves feel that, but it comes back to the liberation of it all. And I just love that you said the word liberate, because so much of us as a people, as a human species, is about the liberation that we need to do for ourselves.
Yeah. And you know this, and I'm just going to say it explicitly. The liberation that we do for ourselves is not just for ourselves. Liberation is liberation of long-held contractions and conditions that get held in their body as neural pathways, as emotional pathways, as cognitive beliefs, as somatic contractions. Like, all those things are imprints, they're conditioning from the conditions of our lives, of our childhood, but more than that, they extend all the way back, not just to our familial situations and the things that formed us when we were soft clay. It's kind of how I think about it. Got kind of imprinted and hardened. The unconditional presence softens the clay, brings us back to that moldable, receptive, creative possibility of as always being soft clay, creative potential. But it actually goes back to, this is the conditioning of our parents. This is our lineage. Their conditioning that got formed and imprinted in them gets passed on to you unconsciously. They give you the best of them, but they give you the worst of them in a way too. They give you the things that were unconsciously not fully met in themselves. And so that kind of becomes our inheritance, our legacy, our lineage. And so as you free this conditioning up and come into wholeness, you're freeing up a whole lineage of your conditioning. This is sort of mysterious and it's hard to talk about, but it's experientially true for myself over and over again. And I have this over and over again with clients. When they feel that liberation in their own being, they feel their parents' pain and compassion for them and love for them. And they have insights into their grandparents, and they feel where things come from. You can often do this. You can say, even in the Fabu thing, you can sometimes even questions. Once again, questions are incredible. Where does this come from? Is this connected to my mother or my father? It's amazing. You'll know immediately. Your whole being will just be like, oh my God, this is my mother, or this is my grandmother. And like, insights will come in, and then it'll open up a certain like compassion and love, more than just for yourself, but like for your loved ones, for your parents, and for them as little ones, and for your grandparents, and for them. And so it goes into lineage and ancestry. It goes into culture and collective. Like, I could go off here. It's a whole new thing that's just unfolding for me so powerfully. So I just want to make the point that it seems really deeply personal and deeply individual, but for me, it's deeply collective and transpersonal and transgenerational. And clearly it goes forward. Like I said, if you have kids, it's the most obvious place. You don't pass on these contractions and conditionings unconsciously, because you've healed them and liberated them, and now you're more reflexive and creative with how you respond to current situations, rather than just like, I'm just going to do this because this is what was done to me, without even knowing it. Or that feeling isn't okay that you're expressing because I can't feel that feeling. Like, you're willing to feel that feeling, and now it's not a problem, and so you can be interactive with your child in a whole new way when it's not a problem in you, and then it's not a problem in them. Wow. Now, how do you be with that? And then it's not just your children, it's everybody you meet in your life, everybody you touch, everybody you relate with and connect with. So it's right. And healing is, we think about it, and it can be actually in the West and in psychological circles, it can feel like a very self-indulgent and narcissistic thing, like just navel gazing and just trying to perfect and improve yourself. And it can be that if we're unconscious. But to me, it is like a practice that's a healing practice in every direction, in every dimension.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah. And I think it's really beautiful how you described the ability to ask ourselves those questions, because I've noticed that very clearly in my own work. When I ask myself the questions, I know this isn't mine, but where is it coming from? And I would encourage whoever is listening to this to really start asking yourself more questions. Riyaz has really, circled back to that point more than once. And it really does come down to the uncovering of those questions and sitting with ourselves and just really just diving deeper into our own experience. It's such an opportunity. And you help so many of your clients with not suffering. And I really do believe that this is that work, right? The healing aspect of coming out of our own victim mentality or our own suffering is doing this work. And so for someone who is potentially curious about this work and just healing and taking more stock in the questions that could potentially lead them to more expanse, what would you suggest for them to kind of start doing? What would you suggest for them to pay closer attention to?
Yeah. Well, there's a few different things. This might sound really simplistic, but the orientation that I think is, like you talked about a victim thing, we unconsciously can feel like victims more subtly and more grossly. And this is not to discount that there are victims. There are horrific things that happen to people and communities and, and children. And so that's not what I'm talking about. But I'm talking about especially for adults and for people that are interested in wholeness, people are interested in freedom, people are interested in relieving suffering. You have to take responsibility for your experience. You have to say, I'm going to meet my experience no matter where it came from, no matter who it came from. I'm going to turn towards it because whatever happened has happened, but how I respond to it is the key to my liberation, the key to my healing. So it's an inner stance of responsibility. And so the way I would describe that, is what's happening is not happening to me, it's happening for me. It's a radical shift, because we can unconsciously, when bad things happen, when good things happen, we're like, oh, look what's happening for me. I'm so blessed. I'm so lucky, it's going to be like this forever. I'm finally made it, And when bad things happen, we don't go, look what's happening for me. Here's an opportunity for growth, or here's something that I get to be with. It's like we go, fuck, why is this happening to me? And right there in the, pardon my French.
No, I appreciate it.
But it's like, that's words like that, like the F word, speak so viscerally to things that are so unconsciously. I like that word because it's like, it's like an emotional, somatic, mental no. No. I don't like this. I don't want this. I'm not going to accept this. And so it's like, this is happening to me and I don't accept it. And so I would say the first thing, to answer your question more directly, is just try to cultivate an orientation, an intention. You'll fall over and over and over again. You'll fail over and over and again. I don't like what's happening. And a couple of things. One is like, what's happening to me, can I open to what's happening for me? Can I open to, maybe there's something in this for me if I can open to it in the right way? It's an opportunity, it's a portal, it's a possibility. So right there, like, it's really important. Like, it's like a deep orientation to whatever's happening, I'm going to open to it. And it's a little bit of blind faith in this, is a deep trust that grows over time. This practice of Thabu, this practice of deep listening, what I didn't say in it is that the more you practice it and the more it yields results, not because you're trying to get it to results, but because it just inherently leads to that, something in your being starts to trust this process more. The trust grows, the mistrust relaxes. The proportion of those two are there. So at the beginning, you just need to, it's like a practice. You almost need to go, okay, Riyaz said so, or Danae said so, or I'm going to take it on as faith. I'm going to try this practice out and see the results. You know, it's like anything you practice. At the beginning, it's like, it's not working, or I don't know if it's working, or is it really going to work? Like, you know, there's a lot of skepticism. And of course there should be, because our experience is the deepest teacher. It's the only teacher. It's the teacher that really you trust the most, your own experience. So I would say, open to your experience from this perspective of, can I turn to this? And then I'll come back to what I think is important from deeper than this orientation. The doorway to this practice is almost always going to be, no, I don't want to feel this. I don't like this. So just actually let yourself start to get open to where you're closed, where you're saying no to life, where you're saying no to an emotion, where your body's saying no, it's shutting down, it's contracting, where your mind is saying, you know, like I'm shaking my head, like, you know, I don't want this. I mean, often when I sit with my clients, they talk about something and I can see them go like this, and it's a clue, like they're in resistance, you know, and understandably. And it's just like, it's, you know, and so what I'd say is, coming back to, there's so many things I want to say, but if you're listening in the way that I was describing at the beginning, embodied presence is another way I talk about it. You're breathing, you're sensing, you're feeling, and you're just inviting yourself to be aware. You will start to notice, you'll notice the good stuff. It's I didn't say this about Fabu, I didn't say this about deep listening. It enhances beauty. It enhances love. Like when your heart's open and you listen on the level of the heart and you breathe into the heart, it's heart expanding. When your belly's soft and you're feeling relaxed and you breathe with it, it just deepens the flow. It just deepens the grounding. It just opens you up. So this practice actually is a multi-directional practice. It's not just for hard stuff. It's for good stuff. So practice deep listening, practice embodied presence, practice opening in every moment. Every moment is a meditation. Every moment is relational meditation. So just breathe, sense, feel, be aware. And then what we'll start to, you'll notice the places that are tight, the places that are stuck, the places that feel yucky, the places you're saying no to. And there you go. There's your portal. There's your face, your focus, your feeling. Now you just acknowledge it. Oh, I'm feeling bad. Where am I feeling that? And you, at first, you might want to do it the way I did it, like I talked about when I was on the couch. I lay down, I gave myself some space. You can sit up. You know, it's good to do it in a space of silence, in a space where you're not on your computer or not having people talking to you, especially at first. But what we'll notice, I mean, I do Fabu all the time now. I do it while I sit with clients. I do it as I'm driving my car. I do it while I'm talking to my partner. And I don't do it in the stepwise process because it's internalized, right? I just do it with my breath, with my sensing, with my feeling. It's just it does me more, you know, because it's just a way of being now. Anyway, so for people that are listening, wanting to know, so the first step is just like, as you're listening, feeling, sensing, being aware, notice where you're saying no to life. Notice where you're shutting down. Once again, as soon as you notice a no in your body, in your heart, in your mind, you just acknowledge it. Don't judge it. That's what we do. We say no all the time. You know, babies do that. Kids do that. We do that. We get more subtle. People are talking to us. We're internally, we're going, no, F you. I don't agree. We don't go, you know, kids are like, I don't agree. But internally, we're having a no. And feel your no. Acknowledge your no. And then make space for it, particularly the ones that are really like contracted. Some of them you'll just breathe with them and they'll release and relax. So that's the beauty of this practice, is a lot of them just get undone with your breath, undone with attention. The Fabu process is for the sticky places, the stuck places, the ones that don't go, like I was describing, the kind of depression knot. So then you make some space and you just ask yourself. Sometimes the questions, once again, are so helpful. What am I experiencing? What am I feeling? What am I sensing in my body? And the questions will just take you right there. You know, the reason questions work is that each of us is a truth seeker and is a truth teller. So if you ask a question in sincerity, your body, your mind, your heart will actually tell you. You have to want to know. It has to be a sincere question. But the intelligence of your system will actually know. It's very different from a top-down, let me figure this out. Oh, I'm sad. I think it's because so-and-so did what, or this got to do with my childhood. We have all sorts of ideas about why we're feeling things. And it's kind of radical to not know. This is a way of not knowing, is another way to talk about this. You just ask the question, what is this? What am I feeling? What am I sensing? What am I believing? What am I experiencing more globally? And then a really great question. It's actually a better question. It really gets to the heart of it. It's like the question's like a key, right? When you put a key in the door, sometimes it just opens the lock. But often you're like, oh, that doesn't work. And you're like, let me try it upside down. So the upside down question is even a better question. What am I not wanting to feel right now? What am I not wanting to sense in my body right now? What am I not wanting to experience? What am I not wanting to have happen? What am I not wanting? What am I believing is going to happen? Which is like the inverse. Like, what am I believing will happen if I don't do anything, or if this happens? So, what am I believing, or what am I not wanting to have happen is a way to kind of get to the cognitive belief level of it. And it's amazing. If you ask a sincere question, it'll just pop up sometimes. Natural wisdom, intelligence, sincerity of your being, of your truth seeker, truth teller. That's what you're tapping into. We all have it. Just trust your sincerity of heart. And so if you sincerely want to be with something, you just invite yourself to be with it and ask the question, and then you'll get it. And then you might be like, oh, I'm sad, or oh, I'm anxious. Oh, I'm tight in my throat. That's enough. There's your face. There's your focus. Once you find it, you might enliven it. The more channels of experience you can bring to it, the more kind of potent and multidimensional your unfolding will become. So if you get a belief like, oh, I suck, I'm no good. Okay, I'm no good, or I'm not enough, right? Sometimes you can just be like, oh, that's what I'm believing. Okay. How do I feel that in my body, or what do I feel that in my body when I tell myself I'm no good? And you usually will notice a contraction, maybe in your belly, or your solar plexus, or your heart, or your throat, or it could be anywhere, a tightness. So then you're like, oh, okay, that's the sensation, that's the location, that's the focus of the face. Okay, is there a feeling here? Is there an image here? Some people are very visual. They get an image of a demon, or a color, or whatever, a star, or a tarantula. I mean, it's amazing what people have when they ask themselves, and then when they tune into it. So you want to light up your channels as best you can. One is fine, it's okay, but take the time to like feeling, sensation, image, belief. And then once you've got all of them there, I'm doing the inner fabu. That's what I'm answering your question with. Like, maybe I'm going to slow down here because I don't want to give too much detail. So then you just, like, once you've given it a face or a focus, you just invite yourself to be with it, breathe with it, befriend it, without trying to change it, without trying to analyze it. And you just invite yourself to. It might only be 10%. Just can I soften? Is it good questions again? Once again, questions are helpful. Can I just soften into this? Can I just be with this a little more? Can I just allow this to be here without trying to change it in this moment? Simple invitations, simple questions. And then you just be with it. Then you just let it unfold. And you be with that. It's fabu.
So good. Yeah, I really just think that it's such helpful context for any of us navigating our feelings And as we should, because that really is the healing process. And I believe that we are just a mycelium network, spider web. And once we all do our own due diligence to go through our own shit, like our own stuff, then we really have more of an opportunity to create a new existence, heaven on earth, right? Like, what does that look like?
That's it. Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I love, like you're talking about mycelium, and we're talking, trees have that same kind of network under the roots, maybe through mycelium and just through their roots. And I think about it, as there are diseased trees and there are healthy trees, and everything in between. Right. And, as a culture, as a community, there's a lot of disease. It comes individually, it comes familially, it comes through our lineage, it comes through our culture and our economics and the land and the pollution, and like we're an ecology, and we're connected to every other ecology. But to not get too broad with it, like, to me, coming back to what I was saying about healing, when you start to heal yourself, if you think about yourself as a tree, and that healing allows you to blossom, to become a fuller tree, a larger tree, a bigger canopy, a more fruitful tree, your gifts come out into the world. But they also go into your roots. Your roots become healthier and deeper and wider and juicier. And then those roots communicate with other roots. A healthy tree now sends nutrients and information through that network of roots to other trees that need it, and start to kind of heal themselves. And that's how healing happens collectively. And it happens above the surface. Our fruits get shared, our shade gets shared, our, to play with the tree analogy, or the oxygenation of the air, all that good stuff that happens above the surface. But it's also happening energetically and underground and in mysterious ways that we don't even fathom. That it's both are true.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that. I love that analogy too, because you think about the roots and the nutrition from roots, that alone can enhance the soil. And with soil, that brings the regeneration to like carbon back into the air and the oxygen. Beautiful. And it's just this never ending, ever present cycle of regeneration. And we love that, right?
Beautiful. I love that connection you made. Yeah. The soil gets enhanced. The culture, we can think about this on a human level. We can think about it on a somatic earth level. That's what's needing regeneration collectively. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I am so grateful for your time, but I want to leave you just some space to offer a dose of wisdom, something that feels relevant for you, that you would love to share with whoever's listening as just an offering.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course.
So many different things could go, but the first thing that just kind of rose in my heart and mind was it's like what we've been talking about. Our healing is not just our own healing. It's everybody, everything's healing. And we can tap into a power greater than ourselves when we dedicate our healing to all beings, to something beyond ourselves. So, it's interesting. That's one of the things that elicits unconditional love, unconditional presence in ourselves more powerfully. You probably know this in yourself. I do. I see it with clients. If you ask people to love themselves, it's really challenging. Can you bring compassion to yourself? Can you bring unconditional love to yourself? It's possible, but it's a stretch. If you ask them to bring it to a loved one, or a loved place, or a loved pet, or even sometimes just to the planet, or to the whole, their hearts come online. Their love comes online in this way that's really profound. And so what I would say to people is dedicate your healing, your practice, to all beings. It's truly what you're doing for all beings. It's truly what you're doing for the whole. And it'll bring your whole heart online so you can heal and have the courage to heal and to trust that what you're healing in yourself is for the greatest good. And then it brings the greatest power and goodness forward. So that's just what I want to kind of say is I really am discovering how powerful and potent it is when you really tap into and tune into the whole beyond yourself.
I got chills when you said that. Yeah, it's so true. And you see it ripple out. I'm sure you have in your work. And even, I'm just so grateful that Luke connected us. I think that that's the beauty of community and just the interconnections and the interweavings that we can embark and just utilize it.
Yeah. Luke right? is part of that root system. He's connecting. He's a connector. He's connected me with another beautiful being a year ago, a woman that I just love that about Luke. I see him do that with. That's one of his superpowers, his core powers. He loves people. He loves teachings. This is my little Luke love fest right now.
Yeah.
So he loves connecting people he loves and teachers and teachings we love. And I can see that's actually one of the things that's your kind of superpower. You seem to just love connecting to teachings and teachers and disseminating and spreading that out. You're one of those connectors. It's a beautiful thing. I really was taken when I listened to your first podcast and you talked about the impulse of where this comes from in you. It's such a heartfelt and sincere offering. Thank you for what you do.
Of course. Yeah. And I did want to use this as also a space for you to share more about your work and how people can find you. I know you have a retreat coming up in April and just how people can potentially even be following you so they can know about courses that potentially come through and any of your other teachings. I would love for people to be exposed to more of your work. So if you can share where they can find you, I'm also going to put it in the show notes for folks, but if you could share, that'd be great.
Thank you. Thanks for that opportunity, Danae. Yeah, a couple of things I could say is, well, first of all, the best place for people to find out what I'm offering and to connect with me and to get on my email list is just go to my website, riyazmotan.com. And I'll spell it, but it'll be in the show notes, but RIYAZMOTAN.com. And so you can get on my email list and hear about upcoming things. On there are current events that are happening. The next thing that's happening, one of the new things that I've been doing is I've been opening up. I've been a teacher of healers and a healer of healers for quite a while now, and now I'm just opening it up to the general public. I'm leading retreats now. They're mostly silent, but they have a lot of dyadic inquiry and group dialogue and time in nature. And there's so many things that are coming through on retreat. I get to feel like retreat's this sort of new playground, this new platform where all these parts of me get to kind of come out, which is different from when I'm teaching students or teaching healers or doing therapy. It's like they all kind of come there. So I'm kind of creating a new art form or expression form for myself. It's a meditation retreat and a silent retreat, but it's also much more dynamic and relational and somatic and nature-based. So many resources we tap into through the retreat. So there's one happening April. It's in near Santa Cruz, California, April 20th to 23rd at the Land of Medicine Buddha. It's posted on my website. People can link onto that. That particular one is actually for healers. Usually my retreats are broad now for the general public. I'm doing a special retreat for healers. I use that word in a very open, kind of general, inclusive sense. Space holders of all kinds, therapists, coaches, counselors, energy workers, yoga teachers. So, it's pretty broad. So if you have a question about whether you would qualify or you feel drawn, you can just email me and I can let you know. But so you can check out the retreat and sign up for the retreat if you want. There's another retreat happening in October. It's not posted yet, but that'll be for the general public. Also in Santa Cruz at Land of Medicine Buddha, this magical place, this incredibly healing place that I've discovered and is supporting my work. And then there's other courses. There'll probably be another course for healers where I'll go much more in depth into the SPABU process and deep listening and bring in the ancestral pieces and intergenerational pieces, bring in so many things I didn't talk about how to apply it with others, how to bring in intuition, how to bring in imagery, how to bring in questions, how to really like tap into resources for your clients, for yourself. So I love teaching that course. There's 2 recorded courses that I taught. There's a level 1 and a level 2 of a course that I taught last fall and the previous fall called Healing from Presence that Luke and I connected at the first time. We've been to both those levels. Those are available as recordings, audio and video. You can email me through my website to get more information about those. So I think that's what's on tap and how people can know more about me and connect with me.
I love that. Thank you so much. And I really would encourage you, if you're interested or curious, please reach out. Riyaz is such a tender heart, tender soul. And I've just been so privileged to be in his presence and get to know him more. And I look forward to having you all listen to this. And I hope it served you well. I hope it met you well. And I hope you are well. I hope that you are carrying this dose of wisdom, this whole hour and 40 minutes with you wherever you go, so that you can integrate it into your relationships and into your life with so much grace and so much compassion. And I'm just sending you off with the utmost peace and blessings. Thank you, Riyaz, for your time, for your energy, for everything that you shared. And thank you.
Thank you, Danae. So grateful to you. Thank you for this. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Hey there, it's Danae again. Just wanted to say thank you for sharing your time and energy with me. If this podcast resonates, please like, subscribe, follow, and share if you're willing. Reviews help too, so if you're feeling the vibe, please leave a review where you can. Sending all the love. Peace.